My grandfather, Shaul Lindenbaum, was born on March 30, 1934, in a town called Landshut in Poland. My grandfather, his parents Esther and Zvi, his two sisters, Rachel and Fela, and his brother Zalman lived in a small house with another Polish family. He was the youngest in his family. When he was 3 years old, he went to a cheder, a place where he studied Hebrew, while his siblings went to a Polish school and to a Jewish Zionist youth movement. Their life in Poland was normal until 1939, when on September 1st, the war between Germany and Poland broke out. On the third week of the war, the Germans invaded to Landshut, so my grandfather and his family escaped to Russia, except for his sister Rachel, who stayed with their uncle in Katowice. During the first year in Russia, they were wandering from place to place until the summer of 1940, when they were transferred to Siberia to an open Russian war camp. In the fall of 1941, when the war between Germany and Russia started, they were relocated again, this time to Kyrgyzstan in Central Asia. His family was sent to a kolkhoz, a collective farm named after Lenin. The living conditions were very difficult. People suffered from hunger and cold. My grandfather's father died, and 2 months later, his mother also passed away. After the death of his parents, my grandfather and his siblings were sent to a Jewish foster family in Naukat, a remote village in the Kyrgyzstan mountains, where they lived until the end of the war. In 1946, when the Polish refugees were allowed to come back to Poland, my grandfather and his siblings took a freight train back to Poland to reunite with their sister Rachel, who lived in Wrocław, Poland, with their uncle. Their uncle already obtained the required certificates to enter Germany, and they settled in Weinheim and lived there in a 3-room apartment together with 2 other families. During their time in Weinheim, my grandfather was first exposed to the Zionist movement Beitar and was fascinated by the idea of making Aliyah to a kibbutz in Israel. My grandfather, who was only 11 years old, and his brother Zalman decided to immigrate to Israel, while his 2 sisters decided to immigrate to Australia. In 1947, my grandfather and his brother were sent on a train to Marseille, France, and together with another 4,000 Jewish refugees, they started their journey to Eretz Israel on the illegal immigrant ship Exodus 1947. Several British warships escorted the Exodus to Haifa and prevented the immigrants from getting off the ship. The immigrants, including my grandfather, were told that they were being transferred to a transit camp in Cyprus, but instead they were taken back to France. The immigrants refused to disembark and therefore were moved to Poppendorf camp in Germany. Only a year later, in February 1948, my grandfather and his brother were sent back to Marseille by the Jewish Agency. Finally, 6 months later, they were boarded on the Atzmaut immigration ship and arrived in Haifa on August 15, 1948. In 1952, my grandfather joined the army, served as a machinery and tanks technician, and served as a civilian employee in the defense system until his retirement. In 1960, my grandfather Shaul and my grandmother Frida, who came as a child from Alexandria, Egypt, got married, settled in Haifa, and had 3 children: my aunt Eti, my mother Tzvia, and my uncle Naor. My beloved grandfather passed away 2 years ago. He had good life among his wife, his 3 children, and his 5 grandchildren. I am, his youngest grandchild, will always see him as a role model symbolizing the triumph of the Jewish spirit. I feel committed to my grandfather's unwritten will to build my life and my family here in Israel.